Good morning, Try Life On family. Welcome back to another edition of the Try Life On podcast. For context, today is Wednesday, July 31st, 2024. It's 11:10 a.m. East Coast time in good old United States. Had the privilege of speaking with Gregg Brown today. If you've been listening to the podcast of late or reading the newsletters that I put out, you've noticed that I've taken a heavy interest on how mindset develops, on how our brains work, how our subconscious mind works. I'm always carrying my book around now, Power of the Subconscious Mind by Dr. Joseph Murphy, written in 1963. We are driven as humans by our brain and by our physiology. And I've taken a heavy interest in it. If you go, there's three particular interviews, including this interview with Gregg Brown, that are testaments to that. One is episode 48 with Peter Sage. If you check that out. The second is another episode that will come out probably in the next week or two with a gentleman by the name of Douglas Knoll. And then this interview with Gregg Brown. Gregg is a globally recognized expert in change management and leadership. Great storyteller, great at engaging audience when he does keynotes all around the world. He's based out of Canada, but he speaks on stages all around the world. And he uses evidence-based insights to get people to be ready for change. Now, usually in his keynotes, he's talking to companies, large teams, medium teams, small teams at Fortune 500 companies such as Johnson & Johnson, TD Bank, KPMG, the UN, Habitat for Humanity, etc. Usually he's speaking to get teams ready for change, but he also helps people like you one-on-one get ready for change because as he says, and I agree, we are more ready for change than we think. We are. If you think about when COVID started in 2020, in March of 2020, if we would have told the whole world in January of 2020, hey, guess what? In March, we're going to go fully virtual. Your ideas about what life should be are going to shift. We're not going to go to offices anymore. We're not going to drive our cars much anymore. And we're going to start to enjoy and feel nature more. All of you would have said, no, the world is not ready for such change. But a catalytic event like COVID happens, and all of a sudden the world is ready for change. So we are ready for change. We can change, especially for those of us who want to try life on. And Gregg is very, very good at getting people to take inspired action to do just that. He's featured in Forbes, Rolling Stone Magazine, Newsweek, Entrepreneur Magazine. He has a #1 Amazon best-selling book out right now called Spark Action: How to Lead Change That Matters, which is actually recommended as one of the top thought leader books to read in 2024 by Thinkers 360, which is a different organization. Long story short, Gregg is someone who gets us to understand that we are ready for change in our life and that through inspired actions, we can take that beautiful imagination in ours and create the life it is that we want, the business that is that we want, the feelings on our day-to-day that we want. And that's why I wanted to bring him on this particular podcast. He is a wonderful soul. We had wide-reaching conversations in the background of just about our own life and our own journey, but I really enjoyed the fact that he came on. And this is part and parcel to the point of, yep, we can build businesses. Yep, we can build families. Yep, we can go for walks. Yep, we can work on our bodies in the gym. But we've got to understand where those motivations come from and how our minds support us or work against us getting to the goals that we want out of life. Gregg is a great, great resource for doing just that. So I hope you appreciate this conversation with Gregg Brown. If you'd like to reach out to him, just go to his website at bechangeready.com, and that will get you connected to him. And of course, as always, thank you for listening to the podcast. I hope you'd consider giving it a 5-star review if it is helping you, such that it can help other people by reaching them as well. My conversation with Gregg Brown. So Gregg, you are what I consider a honest broker and a change agent, whether it's at a company level, small business level, or even today where I tend to focus, which is on the human level. You help a lot of people change. It's not easy. It's
No, it's not.
it's not easy. There's a lot of mindset related to it. Can you give us a little bit of background on who you are and why you care so much?
Absolutely. I think I started my career when I was 10, as I tell my friends, sitting down friends at a chalkboard teaching them math because I thought, oh, I'm going to be a teacher.
Yeah.
And so I taught crafts and canoeing and all that stuff at summer camp. And I've always had that bent that's very sort of similar to yours, which is to really help people and to help try to facilitate them to take risks, to take action.
Yep.
And so, I've been able to do that from being a workshop leader. Now I do a lot of keynote speaking. In the past, I was a talent development consultant and I worked in healthcare and led projects. So, very diverse background. And yet, what drives me is not so much that I believe I can help people because I don't believe I can save anyone. But
Gotcha.
what
Yeah.
I do believe is that I have an ability to translate some more complex concepts and to make them really useful for people that want to create some change in themselves or organizations or on the planet.
Yeah, I love that. And you do have something because I spent a lot of time watching your keynotes on your videos, checking you out on YouTube, and the way that you articulate our ability to change is something that's beautiful. I know some catalytic thought processes came to you when COVID was around
Yeah,
because the way we were living, operating, working, and our value systems, I think for everybody, our value systems started to shift. What happened during COVID for you, and how has that driven how you push organizations forward, and even how you help people change in their own lives?
absolutely. What COVID did for me, I'm a raging extrovert, which means I love people. I love
Yeah,
being with people. I'm
my
an
God.
external processor. And
Yeah,
all of a sudden, I was locked up and, couldn't talk to a lot of people. And I was really lucky in that I'd done virtual sessions before. So my clients picked it up right away. And I wasn't hit too hard
mm, of
financially, even though I was hit hard, but not too bad. I still paid the bills and did all that stuff. But
course.
what I really learned speaking to people around the world, and certainly in the last, 2 years or so, traveling around the world again and speaking in person, is
Mm,
that crises such as COVID or any other crises that we go through, crises help us find our greatness. It helps our teams find our greatness. It helps our organizations find our greatness. And people are like, well, how can they do that? Well, the reality is crises push us in ways that we have not been pushed before. And when we're pushed, we develop something I call change muscles. So we build up our muscles, we build up our capabilities to handle
mm,
disruptive changes. And that's something that we all did during COVID. Everyone on the planet went through something, and we've all developed a new set of knowledge, skills, capabilities to handle whatever comes up in the future, which I
right,
hope is not COVID again.
right, right. Let's hope not.
I
Let's
don't
hope
want to
not.
deal with that again.
Yeah. But why is it like that? Why does it take such big, massive events for us to do what was pretty much sitting at the top of our mind in the first place? It's almost like we need something catalytic to occur to
Yeah.
push us.
Well, I think what I've learned, and I learned this within COVID, is that everyone is more capable of handling changes than they think they are.
Hmm.
If organization, if we'd said to people, hey, you're going to live, very differently for 6 months or a year, and your organization is going to transform, you have to go virtual. Most people would say, oh, that's going to take a year to plan out. We have to socialize it, do a plan. We have to get our stakeholders. We have to talk to hundreds of people. Then we have to get approval. Then we have to do rolling wave rollout, do a pilot project, and blah, blah, blah.
Right. All those
Yet
things.
everybody made the changes like this. And I think what it really shows, and I mean, this in your life, like I do
Yep.
in mine, and many of the listeners, is that when we really are forced to make something happen, or when we really want to make something happen, because those are two types of changes, right? Like
Yep.
once
Yep.
we initiate that we decide to do, are very different than ones that are forced upon us. Yet our responses are usually, we can do it.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying we want to always have to do it,
Yep.
but we have more of our inner strength and our more capability to take action than we think. And
Hmm.
we tend, in my past life of, helping entrepreneurs grow their businesses, we tend to talk ourselves out of stuff before we've even
The
started.
self-talk. Yep. Yep.
People will be like, I'm like, why, what do you want to do? And they'll say, oh, I want to do X. Oh, but I'm not sure I really want to leave my job. I really love the people at my job, but I really love this new job, but I'm not. And I'm like, well, why don't we just start down the
Just
process?
start doing it. Yeah,
Start doing it. Let's see what happens. And you know what? If they offer you the job, you can say no. What a
that's right.
novel idea.
That's right. That's right.
Versus talking yourself out of a job before you've even applied for it.
Yeah.
And I
I,
hear that from entrepreneurs who do it with proposals, with new clients. I'm not sure, la la la, back and forth. I'm like, just try. If it's meant to happen, it will. And you can always say no.
I think we are always our own worst critic in our own lives. I've been studying the mind a lot. Oh, I happen to have it right here with me. This is
Oh,
my book find of the year
oh, I love it. What is
is
it?
The Power of the Subconscious Mind by Joseph Murphy,
Oh,
written
yes.
in 1963. But I've gotten very enamored of understanding how our brains work,
Oh, yeah.
why they try to take us back to relative safety all the
Yes.
time. Someone mentioned to me in a conversation, our brains are anti-expending a lot of energy.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
It
And to make
takes
a change
energy.
requires a ton of energy and a ton of emotion behind it. Yet people think that that fear is no, I guess I should be going back to this thing, but it's actually maybe from a neural pathway perspective, something that you can actually adapt.
For sure. The more practice you get, like, so first off, you're so right. Like, our subconscious drives everything. It's like, that's
Yeah.
why, affirmation theory doesn't really work, where, let's say you don't have a lot of money. And I've read things that say, stand in front of a mirror and say, I'm rich. I'm rich.
Yeah.
I'm rich.
Yeah.
Well, your subconscious is, if you listen to the voice that's there, unless you really are rich, if you don't have a lot of money, your voice inside is saying, no, you're not, you loser. You have
Right. It's
nothing. You have
telling you.
$5 in your bank account.
Yeah.
That's going to override. It's like in the leadership business world, people are like, we're going to tell everybody a positive spin. And I'm like, but everybody's subconscious sees the reality and they think you're insincere and out of touch. And it's the
Hmm.
same principle with that affirmation theory. For that stuff to work, there has to be alignment with what you're saying and
Yes. A
alignment with your
belief.
subconscious. So you have to
Yes.
be able to say, I'm willing to be rich. So then,
Yes.
then your subconscious is like, that's true.
That's right.
But your subconscious will override, like you say all the time.
It will override it. It will override it. And if people are willing, in some of the conversation or the chats that you've had on stage as keynotes, a theme kept coming up, at least for the 4 or 5 that I watched, which
Yeah,
was we are more change ready than we think.
absolutely.
I'd like you to touch on that because as you and I were talking in the green room before the conversation, most of the listenership, if not all, the people who interact with Try Life On and read the newsletters and reach out, they all want to. Everyone is listening to get motivation or a foundational principle, or I
Yeah,
want to be like Greg, or Maurice did this, but they're not doing it. And when you said multiple times we are more ready for change than we think, that really hit me. So I wanted you to touch on that concept.
absolutely. So, we can go back to the initial conversation we had about COVID. I
Yeah.
believe so. One of the things with my work, I talked, during COVID to people all over the planet. Like, I'm talking Syria, Kenya, Uganda, the Middle East, everywhere. And, I remember someone in Syria saying to me, COVID's okay for me. I'm not being bombed right now.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
So
perspective. That's
there's
perspective right there.
perspective, right? So I do believe this, that if you can get through something like COVID or get through a war or get, and I'm not putting a positive spin on any of that
Yeah,
because I
of
know it's
course.
all crappy. If you can get through that, there's not much we can't do.
Mm,
If you think about, if you can do that, we can do that. So that's where my thought process came from. We are more change ready than we think we are. We can do more than we think we can, because if we can do that, there's not much we can't do.
that's
Because it
right.
was changing pressures, changing financial situations, the interplay of personal, professional, politicization of health, all that stuff came to the forefront. And I think, if we can do that, there's not much we can't do. And one of the tips I encourage your listeners to do, and they can do that
Mm,
with themselves, their teams, the people they work with, is, after you listen to this podcast, take a moment and take just 2 minutes and write down, what new knowledge and skill and capability did I learn in the last 4 years?
Right.
What did I learn about myself? What new change skills do I have? And then the second question you want to ask is, how can I use these to move forward? What can I
Right.
use from that time? And I do this with teams, I do it with large groups, I do it with small groups. When you actually take a moment to write down, and you have to write it down, because if you don't write it down, it's not real. It
Mm.
ingrains it in your brain, just like what you want
I'm
to
that way
do.
too. I need to feel the tactile movement of
Write
it.
it down or type
Yeah.
it out. I don't care what people do.
Yeah.
Write it down, type it out. What are those knowledge, skills, and abilities that you developed? And how are you going to use those going forward? Because when we use perspective to our advantage, it ramps up our brain to engage in the future rapidly.
Mm. It ramps up our brain to
Yeah,
engage in the future rapidly.
rapidly, absolutely. Because otherwise, our brain is doing what you were saying. I don't have time. I don't want to do that. I want to protect myself. I want to stay in my comfort zone. I mean, comfort zones are good
Yep.
because you're using the least amount of energy to do the maximum amount of work. Habits are good. Like, good habits are good.
Yes. Yes.
Takes less energy. And you only have so much mental, physical, emotional energy to give. Yet the language we use and the thoughts we think can either engage our brain or disengage. So let me give you a simple
Yeah,
example. And
please,
I'm sure
please.
all the listeners have experienced this. We've been tasked to do something. You have to complete a proposal, submit something, to the IRS, whatever it is you got to do. Like, I can't do this. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to make this happen. And first thing you want to just catch that language, because when you say I don't know what to do, it creates more of those neurons and neural pathways, like you
Yes.
were
You're
saying,
convincing
of I
yourself.
don't know what to do. So a simple thing that everyone can do that's listening, and that I have to still catch myself, and I've been practicing this for 25 years. That's how, I'm still catching it.
Of course.
When you're saying, I don't know how to figure this out, I just want you to switch the words to I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to figure this out. Because
It's
guess what?
just
As
a
soon as
play
you
on
do
words.
that,
It totally sets you in a different direction, just moving a couple letters around.
right. And what happens is this, your brain and I can guarantee this for anyone listening, and I like it, just try it out, and you can email Maurice or me and let us know how it worked.
Yeah.
If you just change those words from I don't know what to do, it's like if you say, like, let's just do it like this.
Yeah.
If you're sitting there planning a vacation, I don't know where I want to go. I don't know what we're doing. Are you ever going to get to planning your vacation? No.
Never.
Where do we want to go? So you have to change your thought process. And it's hard when we're under pressure. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to make this happen. I got to get this done. You got to catch it and go, I'm going to figure this out. And
That's
if you
it.
do that within 2 to 3 minutes, I can guarantee your brain will start to get those neurons, neural pathways going. It'll start to pull in information faster than conscious thought. And guess what? You'll get ways to figure it out, because you will figure it out. You've always figured it out.
Yeah. And you're
And that's a
telling
simple
your
thing.
brain and your subconscious that you want to figure it out. With your other language, you're saying don't even start. Don't
I'm
even
going to
try.
figure it out. I'm going to figure it. And
That's
in two
it.
to 3 seconds, it's not even minutes. In seconds, you'll get ideas to figure it out. I've seen
Hmm.
it countless times because we get stuck. Our brains are designed to protect our information, like you were saying, protect our energy management.
That's
So
it.
that I don't want to do, I'm going to figure this out. And it just shifts that energy.
I love that. And there's another example of that. I was taught by someone uh similarly smart on the topic like you, and she said um she was coaching me, helping me to establish my program for my coaching students. And one of
Yeah,
the
yeah,
things she did for me was Maurice, understand the concept of if only versus what if.
absolutely.
Right? So there folks want to change. Well, if only I could go be a baker, but I'm a
Yeah,
corporate person now. If only I could travel to this place. If only I could meet Greg. If only I could
yeah,
have enough money to do the following. But similar to what you just said, that immediately shuts you down. That tells your body and your brain and your whole system, if only means, well, he's not trying or she's not trying. But if you
absolutely.
flip that with the words, what if? What if I can meet Gregg Brown? What if I can travel to this place? What if I can start this business? What if I could leave corporate and open a bakery and generate low six figures and have a designed life the way that I want? You
Right.
put it in the what if context, and it just changes your direction and your aperture and your what do they call it? The reticular activating system, where you
Absolutely.
will
The
start to
good
pick up on things.
Well, yeah, in your RAS, your reticular activating system, is that part that you can use to ramp up that brain's engagement to solve problems faster. And so
Yes.
when you say, I'm going to figure it out, it triggers your reticular activating system to notice ways to figure it out. And it's like, you know, if you've ever bought a new car, and I tend to buy used cars.
Me
They're a
too.
couple of years old, just I'm like that.
Yep.
And I'm sure all the listeners who've bought cars remember, when you get into your new car, new to you car, you're driving around, you're like, oh my gosh, look, there's another one like mine over there. Oh my gosh, there's
Yes.
another one like mine over there. Oh my gosh, there's another. Have I joined my own car club? And people are like, well, and it's like, or if anyone's been pregnant that's listening, they know this. All of a sudden, everybody's pregnant. It
Yes.
doesn't mean there's more people that are pregnant. It doesn't mean there's more people that have cars that are like yours. What it does mean is you've triggered your brain subconsciously to start to notice information that matches what you have.
Yes.
And
That's
that's how
relevant to you.
fast it works. And we
That's
want our
relevant
brains
to
to work
you.
fast.
Yes. And similarly, the other thing I caught from you a couple times in your chats and keynotes was you can't create change solely by, or we can't create change solely by ourselves. I wanted you to touch on that because at least in my journey, 20s and early 30s, I kind of did everything on my own. Don't get me wrong, I had certain business partners, I
Oh,
had realtors and bankers and
mhm,
people that helped me.
mhm,
But in general, my fuel for going on my financial freedom and location freedom, time freedom journeys were self-induced. But
mhm.
what I recognize in reflection, I'll be 49 on Saturday, and I started my journey when I was
Okay.
23. It was lonely. And I feel like I could have gone much faster, farther if I had reached out and linked to people who were on similar change trajectories or were more supportive of the process. So what do you mean by you can't create change solely by yourself?
Well, I think the reality is this: we live in a very matrixed and connected world.
Yeah.
And you can try to push through changes. And this is what I see so much with entrepreneurs, and I try to get them out of this. So all of us as entrepreneurs will sit down going, okay, how can I do this? How can I make this happen? How can I, and I hear it everything from how can I get my website done to how can I get more clients?
That's right.
And I think the question needs to shift to, and if you do, and there's a great book on this by Dan Sullivan called Who Not How, and it really encapsulated some of the work I've talked about and done for years, and he was much better at framing it in his book. Um, and he said, which I've said for years, I'm sure you very much said, which is, stop trying to figure out how for yourself. Ask who instead. Who can
Who?
I ask for help? Who can I talk to? Who can help me? Because
That's
the
right.
who will make your outcome happen faster than you
Absolutely.
sitting at your desk going, how. I'm not saying not to brainstorm hows. Yes, do that. To start the problem solving process, it's often better to start with who can I ask? Who can help? Who can I get information from? Because I
Yeah.
guarantee someone else has done it somewhere.
Yeah, there's no need to reinvent the wheel. Instead of thinking about the what forever, ask where's the who.
So I think the most important thing is for when entrepreneurs or any of your listeners get stuck
Hmm.
is instead of sitting there going, how can I, lift it up and ask who can help
Yes,
me? Who can I ask? Who can I reach out to? And that's why we can't do change by ourselves.
I love it. I love it. And I want to throw one more thing out there. So that was two of three that I caught from your conversations. But the last thing that was really important to me, that I wanted to ask you was how does building trust with people impact the change process?
That is a good question, and it's about a 5-hour conversation.
I know,
so,
I know, I know.
so this is what I think. I think
Yeah.
building trust is really important. And I think that, you know, all of us, we don't build trust 8 hours a day. So it's not, so if you have teams working with you, with your colleagues or, whether friends or clients, you build trust in what I used to call these 5% moments, but I call them 10% moments because they happen more. And the
10% moments.
10%
Yeah.
moments are those moments that happen, and there's no research for this. This is just my
Yeah.
metaphor.
Yeah.
The 10% moments are those moments that happen that are crucial and critical. So they're the
Mm.
ones, for example, that you've gone to a meeting and then you go back to your desk, you're like, darn, I wish I'd said something differently, and how you handled that. It's when a
Hmm.
client comes to you and something didn't work well, and it's how you handled it. It's something that went really well that could have gone wrong, and you're like, I did that really well. So it's those moments that are sort of what I call those crunch moments, and I think
Yep.
we're going to see more of those because 50% of the planet's undergoing elections this year.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah,
That
and
much.
and
Yeah.
some of the research that's coming out is that the number one job of leaders, whether it's in a large organization or running your own businesses, is going to be able to do conflict management, conflict resolution conversations. Because
Absolutely.
even though, and this is my take, even though the world seems more polarized, I
Hmm.
don't believe it. I believe most of us want to play in the middle, and most of us want to play with and be friends with our neighbors.
Mm.
I believe that. I believe the polarization is what makes news. I believe the polarization
That's what's being put out there. It's
is what's
crazy.
being put out there. Yet I don't. I believe most of us, we may play left, right, whatever around sort of the circle that's sort of in the middle of left, right, whatever paradigm you want to use. That most of us want to play in the middle somewhere. We want to
Yeah.
be with friends with our neighbors. We want to be friends with the people we work with. We may have
That's it.
different values. We may have different backgrounds. We may have different things. Yes, there needs to be some commonalities. But I do believe most of us want to play in the middle. Most of us
I
don't want to
agree.
hate our neighbors. Most of us don't want to hate our colleagues.
I agree. I
And
agree.
yeah, and I believe that this this piece for us as leaders is coming together and really thinking about, what are those skills that we're going to need so that we can play in the middle together, because that's how
I,
we get our work done. If we all
yes,
sat in meetings at work staying completely ingrained in our positions and saying, I'm not going to do this, I'm not going to do that, we'd be bankrupt in 2 seconds. All
we
businesses
won't
would
get
go
anywhere.
under. It's about how do we
We
come together and seek agreement? How can we work together on when we have competing priorities? And that
That's
to me
it.
is on a world scale and on our own business, in our own businesses.
On a local scale too. And
Yeah.
just one follow-up point to what you said. I'm very big on, for those who follow it, go to trylifeone.com, go to the newsletter section, go to newsletter 28. I'm very big on mental diets, information diets, and controlling
Yes.
environment.
Yes.
I fell into it in the last 8 years, in the last 8 months, and this is what has happened. I shut off Instagram, I shut off Facebook, but I like them as tools, but they can be very much what you've never done and things that you've never done in places you've never gone, and
Yeah.
they push anxiety. Then the news is always pushing out
Yes.
the polarizing
They
things so they
are.
can get ratings, and then that stops exactly what you espouse, which is no, you are ready for change, but you are allowing information to permeate that beautiful mind of yours that is going to stop you from making those changes, because then you are more fearful, more fearful and more worried about what's going on out there. But I have found ever since I instituted mental diets, my world and my life and my anxiety have gotten so much better.
For sure. Because you don't have
Yep.
control over most of that other stuff.
That's right.
And, one of the things I remember hearing many years ago, um, and it really helped shift my perspective. And what
Mm.
I'm saying is I'm not saying put a positive spin on bad situations. Let me
No, for
just put a
sure. For sure. Yeah.
big corollary around that. And I wrote a whole paper on the tyranny of positive thinking. So I believe you do need to get into the negative sometimes.
Yep.
You do need to get into it. And I'm not saying don't.
Yep.
Yet what we're talking about is keeping our perspective so we can take action.
That's it.
And to
Oh,
do that,
yes.
sometimes we do have to go into the negative, get out of it. But when we're saying information diets, we're not saying don't be aware. And I know that's not what you mean. But
No,
when we become so attached to stuff that is out of our control, most of the stuff that we see in the news is out of our control, that it can become paralyzing to us and
that's it.
disheartening.
That's
And
it.
something that really helped much shift my perspective on that years ago was the head of the United Nations said this, and it really made me wake up. He
Mm.
said, something we never report on is that peace is breaking out all over the
All the
planet.
time.
Peace
Yes.
breaks out all over the
Yes.
planet.
Yeah.
And there are people that would like you, and wars break out too, and peace breaks out.
Peace breaks out a lot. I love that.
And about once every year I remember to Google how many war. And at one point, about I think it was 20 years ago, there were less wars breaking out and more peace breaking out. And
Wow.
I think that is, and I'm not saying ignore the wars. That's not what I'm saying.
Sure.
What
Sure.
I am saying is that most of us don't want war. Really believe this. Most of us don't want to
Absolutely.
be bombed. Most of us don't want to be hate our neighbors. Most of us want us to get along. And you take that down to a micro level with the people you work with and your clients. Do you want to work with clients you don't like? No. Do you want to work with colleagues you don't like? No. We want to work with people we get along with. And I think
That's
we
it.
all fundamentally want to get along. And I think the challenge is the rhetoric is we're so different, we can't get along, blah, blah, blah. And I think that's crap. I've
Yeah.
traveled all over the world like you have.
Mm-hmm.
Fundamentally, most of us just want to be nice to each other and
It's
get along,
just
whether it's getting a coffee or whether it's
yes.
working together or whether it's being served in a restaurant or serving people. We just want people to be nice. And
That's
that's
it.
where we can work at an individual level against the polarization, just treating people with respect and being nice.
Treating
Sounds
people with respect and
superficial.
being nice is a great way to is a great way to sum that thought up and get people to move to action. I know about your book, Spark Action. Just as a parting thought, can you tell us a little bit about the book? By the way, I caught up a couple clips of it. I have now ordered the book. It's on the
Oh,
way
thank
from
you.
Amazon. Yeah, man. These things are important. We don't want to just let's go build businesses all the time, or let's go make something bigger, or let's go get more. We really need to understand the like what pushes us to take action.
Yeah,
Your book certainly does. So tell us a little bit about the book, and maybe as a parting thought, give one more tidbit on something that our folks can do to take action so they can go try life on their way.
for sure. I think so. The book came from all my work over the years of
Mm,
working with leaders, working with entrepreneurs, business owners, even people in healthcare. I used to work with physicians and nurses who would say to me, I just want people to stop smoking, or I just want this to happen, or I just, and businesses were like, I just want my clients to buy this. And leaders would be, I just want my staff to do this.
right.
I need to convince people to take action. And the book really came from this whole thing. Take the pressure off. You can't
Mm,
sell and convince people on your ideas. Stop using that language. Get into the head of the other person and ask, what do they need to be, do, nor have to say yes? Because the change, the agreement, the buy-in, the purchase, it all happens in the mind of the other person. It's not
wow.
about you. Yes, you have your mandate that you need to make happen. They got their stuff too. So you want to come together and find out what it is. And the big chunk of the book that has resonated with the readers that have reached out to me anyway
Mm,
has
mhm.
been, how do we get people engaged in our ideas that may be unpopular or engaged in our ideas that might create extra work for them or cost them more money or whatever, that disruption like we talked about earlier. And one of the pieces I've said for years is this:
Mm,
you cannot fight emotion with fact. You can't throw facts at people and benefits and try to sell them on an idea and give them all the stuff if they're really emotionally caught up in not
wow.
doing something. You have to just listen and we think that we have to problem solve, because I guarantee everyone listening here is a really good problem solver. And there's a good thing about being a problem solver is people give you more problems to solve. The bad thing is you'll want to solve everyone's problems and you can't. And the parting piece around this is about not fighting emotion with fact, is listening and acknowledging people's issues. Yes, I hear you're busy. Yes, I know this sucks. Yes, this is awful. Yes, I hear you. That can move people down the path of change as much as problem solving and throwing the benefits and reasons at them.
Love it. Love it. And people should go about down that path of change because they only have one life. I am sure that this conversation is going to spark some action in people. I'm actually betting on it and counting on it. That's why I'm glad you came on the podcast today, my man. And I look forward to learning more, but I believe you. I think we are more ready for change than we give ourselves credit for. We worry about fear too much. We don't take enough risk, relative risk. I'm not suggesting people kill themselves or anything like
No,
that
but
or do something
people get
unsafe, but
worried,
yeah,
and worries are just made up negative
they
stories.
are. We're
And we want to
stopping
change.
ourselves.
Yes. And we want to turn our worries into risks. How can I manage this worry? When you turn worries into risks, you can
Turn your
actually take
worries into risk.
Absolutely. Because worries are made up negative stories, and you want to listen to people's worries? Absolutely. If you want
I
to
love
take
that.
action, turn them into risk. What's the likelihood of this happening? Low, medium, or high? If it does happen, how bad is it going to be? What can I do to prevent it from happening?
Mm-hmm.
What's the plan B if it does happen? And then you develop a plan which will help you take action on things you might be uncertain about.
Because you know your steps. Greg, how do people reach you if they're trying to track you down?
Absolutely. Go to bechangeready.com, just the way it sounds, bechangeready.com. They can find me on LinkedIn. I'm there. Instagram, Gregg Brown TO. But go to my website, bechangeready.com. It'll link you up to everywhere and everything.
All over the stratosphere. All right. Well,
Yeah,
I
and give us
appreciate it.
some feedback on this wonderful podcast. I know Maurice is
Yes.
here.
Absolutely. We'll get that feedback, man. Honestly, thank you for giving me a bit of your time. I think we rescheduled a couple times. It was probably on me, but it's my pleasure to finally meet you after stalking you a little bit on the internet. And I'm glad that I did because you know a lot and can motivate people to make some changes in their life, and that's what this is all about. So I appreciate it.
Thank you, Maurice, for having me.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Hey guys, this is Maurice, host of the Try Life On podcast, and thank you for listening to another episode. I hope you are finding it useful and helping you design your own lifestyle that you don't need a vacation from. If that's the case, please consider dropping a review for me, whether in Apple, iTunes, or in Spotify. Drop a review, put some stars on it, give me some feedback on how I can make the podcast better, what information you are looking for. I am doing my best to get information to you on the Try Life On principles, the 5 freedoms, how to build lifestyle, travel hacking, all of it. And I want to do it for you. So please do a review for me. And until next time, my name is Maurice Philogene, and this is the Try Life On podcast. Peace.